Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the heart of the Vatican, but not the part filled with choirs, incense, or papal grandeur. Instead, you're quietly descending a narrow stone stairwell behind the kitchens, your fingertips trailing along cold, pitted walls, worn smooth by centuries of furtive footsteps. It's the year 1483, and the Vatican pantry is waiting. The corridor smells of beeswax, old garlic, and something sweetly sour, perhaps spilled vinegar from decades ago. There's a silence here, but it's not the peaceful kind. It's the kind of quiet that feels like it's listening. As you push open the heavy door, its hinges sigh dramatically, as if they too are tired of secrets. Inside the pantry is larger than you expected. The air is cool and dry, lined with stacked barrels and shelves, bowing under the weight of preserved figs, wheels of hard cheese, wrapped in waxed linen, and rows of dusty amphorae, labeled in Latin, so faded it now looks more like cryptic poetry. There's a string of dried lavender nailed to one beam. A long dead mouse lies respectfully curled in a clay bowl near the back, as if it too once dined here. But tonight, you're not here for food, you're here for spoons. Near the far wall, beneath a faded mural of St. Lawrence cheerfully roasting on a gridiron, not exactly bedtime material, sits a wooden chest. It's waist-high, built of walnut, and secured with a heavy iron clasp that's seen better centuries. A single unlit candle sits atop it, its wick curled like a question mark. You kneel. The floor is cold. A soft breeze you can't quite explain brushes the back of your neck. And when you open the chest slowly, reverently, it squeaks just enough to make you wince. Inside, nestled among crimson velvet folds, lie 5 spoons. 5, not 6. Each has its cloth pocket, its own little embroidered seal, its peculiar glint. One is carved from ivory, another from horn. There's a silver one shaped like a scallop shell, and one supposedly made from narwhal tusk, although historians still argue whether it might be goat bone that's been very ambitiously sanded. The 5th has a faint golden tint, with a handle shaped like an angel doing a very dramatic hair toss. But one space is empty. Spoon number 6 is gone. This isn't just cutlery, by the way. These spoons aren't for soup. They were sacred implements used in ritual feasts, in ceremonial anointings, and in rare rites that took place behind locked chapel doors. One was said to have touched the lips of St. Peter himself during his final meal, probably fish stew. Another had once been lent to a visiting queen who returned it only after 3 diplomatic letters and a very pointed sermon. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where in the world you're winding down tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Back to the pantry. You stand slowly, feeling a faint pressure behind your eyes, like the room itself just frowned. A movement in the dust near the chest catches your eye. A faint scrape mark, curved and deliberate. The chest has been dragged recently by someone careful but not quite careful enough. You glance around. The candle hasn't been lit, but there's fresh wax dripped on the floor nearby, still warm. Someone was here, not long ago. From the hallway, soft footsteps echo leather soles on stone, slow and hesitant. A glow approaches beneath the pantry door candlelight. You do what any rational person would do in a sacred food vault full of missing silverware. You hide behind a stack of barrels. The door creaks again. A hooded figure slips inside. You can't see the face. They move with the confidence of someone who knows this room well. Their candlelight flickers across the shelves, the jars, the spoons, then lingers on the empty slot. The figure murmurs something in Latin. You catch the words absentia inventarium and benedictus. Then they pause, sigh softly, and leave quietly as they came. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath long enough to qualify for monk-level asceticism. Slowly, you emerge. The chest is untouched, still 5 spoons, still one space is conspicuously vacant. You close the lid gently, as if sealing in a secret, and perch on a crate of preserved turnips to think. In 1483, papal record-keeping was inconsistent, let's say. The spoons were inventoried by a friar named Bonaventura, who was more poet than bureaucrat. He once spent an entire scroll describing the glistening temper of the silver spoon's shadow, and forgot to note which spoon he was talking about. The most recent entry, scribbled in a shaky hand, reads 6 spoons, all present. 1 perhaps relocated. Cardinal B involved. Of course, Cardinal B. The Vatican's answer to whodunit, the problem. There were 3 Cardinal Bs on record that year, Bartolomeo Benedetto and Bernardino, each more eccentric than the last. Bartolomeo was a relic collector with an alarming interest in bone fragments and candle stubs. He once declared a fig leaf holy because it had fallen during a psalm reading. Benedetto, on the other hand, was a habitual borrower with a habit of forgetting to return things. He once misplaced a gold censer for 2 years because he'd been using it as a bookend. And Bernardino, quiet, reclusive, spoke mostly in parables and looked like someone who'd committed a minor crime once and was still apologizing for it. The morning after the spoon vanished, the Vatican carried on as usual. Bells rang, monks shuffled. Wine evaporated from barrels at a statistically improbable speed. But in the pantry, an unspoken tension brewed. Brother Giacomo the monk, assigned to the spoons, reported waking up with a faint spoon-shaped bruise on his shin. Must have dreamt of duty, he mumbled sleepily. No one questioned him further, partly because he immediately fell back asleep on the floor. Meanwhile, Cardinal Benedetto swore on Saint Sebastian's elbow, which he may or may not have possessed, that he hadn't entered the pantry in weeks. Cardinal Bartolomeo said nothing, merely smiled and polished something small in his robe pocket. No one asked Bernardino. He was meditating in a tower and had stapled a note to his door that said, "Repentance in progress. Disturb not lest ye unravel my epiphany." And so the first spoon remained missing. No formal accusations were made, no guards dispatched. The church was, after all, practiced in the art of quiet cover-ups. A whisper here, a nod there, a minor edit to the inventory. Life would go on, but not for you, not just yet, because once you've seen the empty velvet fold of a vanished papal spoon, it sticks with you. It itches behind your eyes, it curls into your thoughts like incense smoke in a closed chapel. Somewhere in these hallowed halls, Someone had the nerve, the audacity to steal a holy spoon. And you intend to find it. You rise from the crate of preserved turnips with the kind of resolve normally reserved for saints and accountants. One spoon is gone. And though the rest of the Vatican seems content to turn the other cheek, possibly something inside you itches for answers, not justice exactly, just clarity. Preferably the kind you can write on a scroll in neat, non-smudged ink. You slip out of the pantry past the shadowy beams and silent barrels and into a cloister corridor, still echoing with last night's rain. The stones are damp and cold beneath your feet, and your candle casts long, flickering shadows on the limestone walls. There's something oddly comforting about being the only one awake, unless, of course, you aren't. Your first stop, the inventory room. It sounds thrilling, you know. But back in the late 1400s, the Vatican's version of an office was equal parts scriptorium closet and secret keeper. You push open the wooden door to find exactly what you'd hoped for: rows of pigeonhole shelves stuffed with parchment scrolls tied in red ribbon. The room smells like ink wax, and the soft mildew of knowledge long undisturbed. You scan the room and find what you're looking for: a heavy ledger embossed with the seal of Pope Sixtus IV. His Holiness was many things: a patron of art, a skilled theologian, a man with deeply suspicious nephews. But above all, he was someone who believed in writing things down, especially when those things were spoons. The ledger creaks as you open it. Pages flutter like the wings of tired angels. And there it is under a column marked Sacred Utensils, lent through Ascension 6 spoons, all blessed. One made of narwhal, or perhaps goat. Final inventory note. Spoon 6 transferred per Cardinal B, no signature, no return date. There's even a crude sketch, more of a doodle really, of Spoon 6, a long-handled piece with a strangely bulbous bowl and a filigree handle shaped like a lion sneezing. You stare at it for a long moment, trying not to let your brain spiral into spoon-based conspiracy. And then something peculiar catches your eye. Below the sketch is a note in a different hand, smaller and hastier, possibly intended for use in Tuesday's Chrism Mass. Advise double check. Bro G. Tuesday's Chrism Mass. That was 4 days ago. You feel a prickle on the back of your neck. So the spoon wasn't just stolen, it was needed. Someone thought it would be used. Someone expected it. Your stomach growls, probably because you've been awake for hours, possibly because the pantry smelled just a little too much like pickled pears. You ignore it. A true Vatican sleuth needs no sustenance, just parchment and petty politics. Which brings you to your next suspect, Cardinal Bartolomeo. Now, Bartolomeo isn't just any cardinal. He's a known enthusiast of relics, bones, beads, and feathers allegedly fallen from seraphim. And most relevantly, he is the only person in the entire apostolic palace who once commissioned a gold spoon shaped like a fish to honor the miracle of the loaves. The spoon reportedly cost more than a peasant's yearly wages and was last seen resting on a velvet cushion at his bedside table. You head toward his quarters, keeping your footsteps quiet on the marble floor. The halls are still mostly empty, just a few sleepy monks and a Swiss guard humming tunelessly. When you reach his door, you don't knock. Bartolomeo is a light sleeper, but a heavy snorer. The perfect storm. You ease the door open. Inside, his chamber is dark and cluttered. Scrolls, reliquaries, boxes labeled "Do Not Touch" in 5 languages. And yes, on a pedestal by the bed is a small display stand. Empty. But there, just beneath it, you spot something curious. A cloth napkin. Folded? Embroidered with the papal seal. And on it, a faint circle, the kind a bowl-shaped object might leave behind. You resist the urge to sigh dramatically. Instead, you crouch low and peer beneath the bed. Dust. A sock, a candlestick. A spoon numb. Just a tiny statue of Saint Ambrose chewing on a book. You rise again and step toward the windowsill. There's a parchment note pinned to the shutter with a rose thorn. You unfold it carefully. For purification only. Will return before dusk. B. Purification. That's not suspicious at all. Historians still argue whether Bartolomeo's obsession with purifying relics came from genuine piety or a deep-seated need to bathe everything in holy water after a monk sneezed on a rosary in 1478. Either way, he once dunked a thurible in a basin of blessed oil. It took 3 weeks to clean the mess. You decide to take a detour. If the spoon is being purified, there's only one place it would go: the sacristy. This is where garments are pressed, vessels are scrubbed, and clergy quietly bicker over who gets the good censer. You arrive just as Brother Angelo the sacristan is hanging a cassock to dry over a low brazier. You clear your throat. He jumps like someone caught pilfering communion wafers. "Yes," he squeaks. You point to the stone wash basin in the corner. "Anyone bring something unusual through here today, small, blessed, spoon-shaped?" He blinks. I believe Cardinal Bartolomeo dropped off something wrapped in silk, told me not to unwrap it, said it was temperamental. Temperamental. You approach the basin. It's empty. Still damp, though. And on the side, a faint, oily ring, golden, circular, unmistakable ring. A spoon's been here recently. And then Brother Angelo adds, "He said he'd collect it tonight." You pause. So it hasn't vanished entirely. It's in circulation. Quietly, secretly, but not destroyed, not sold. Yet. You leave the sacristy more puzzled than ever. Why hide a spoon being used for sacred rites? Why cloak it in secrecy unless there's something more than ritual involved? You begin to suspect the spoon isn't the whole story. It might just be the key to something else. And as you wander back into the long corridors of the apostolic palace, candles flickering in their sconces and frescoed ceilings, looking down with faint amusement, you begin to sense a deeper current under the surface of Vatican life. One of whispered permissions, unspoken exchanges, and rituals within rituals. You pass a young novice carrying a basket of incense. He nods politely, then trips on his robe and mutters something unholy in Latin. A small reminder that, holy or not, this place is very human. You stop near the central courtyard and glance up at the sky where the first hint of daylight smudges the darkness like chalk on slate. Somewhere that spoon is waiting, but not for long. You wake just before the second bell. Not because you slept, who can sleep with papal cutlery on the loose, but because a dove lands outside your window and starts pecking at the frame like it's demanding to be canonized. The sky is bruised with early dawn, and the Vatican hums with its usual quiet choreography sandals on flagstone, distant chanting the unmistakable thwack of someone misjudging the weight of a cassock in the laundry yard. You dress quickly. Your goal this morning, to understand what made these spoons special in the first place. Not spiritually, though yes, some were believed to carry blessings, but physically, materially, tactilely. You need to know what kind of spoon could cause grown men to whisper in corridors and wrap it in silk as if it were a relic of St. John's teacup. So you go, where all great church secrets go, to take a nap, the Papal Museum of Miscellaneous Objects. It's not called that officially. The formal name is Sacristia Antiqua et Custodia Relicorum Minorum, or storage room for holy stuff that's not quite holy enough for display. You descend a spiral staircase lit only by 3 oil lamps and a window that seems to glow more out of obligation than sunlight. The door at the bottom sticks, like it knows secrets are supposed to stay put. Inside wooden cabinets, dusty reliquaries, small caskets lined in velvet. Labels are handwritten in curly Latin. And some objects don't have names, so much as descriptions, like probably important bell, not the good one, or oil-stained ribbon, possibly from a saint. You're not alone. Brother Stefano is there, an archivist with hair like a startled mop and fingers permanently ink-stained from correcting everyone else's Latin. He looks up from his scroll and squints. "You're early," he rasps. "Or late. Depending." You nod toward the cabinet marked Utensilia Sacra. I need to understand the spoons. He doesn't even ask which one. He just shrugs, motions toward the key ring hanging from his belt, and mutters middle drawer. Don't move the tongs, they're cursed. You find the drawer carefully, avoid the tongs, which look suspiciously like salad servers, and ease it open. Inside sketches, dozens of them. Designs for ceremonial spoons across the centuries. Some are shaped like birds. One shaped like an angel holding a clam. Some tiny, others absurdly long, as if meant to reach across tables during particularly passive-aggressive dinners. Each spoon is labeled who made it when it was blessed and what rite it was used for. And there, tucked in the back, is the one you're looking for. Spoon 6, a note accompanies the sketch, crafted from ivory and inlaid with mica dust to shimmer during Mass. Said to be carved by the same artisan who made the chalice of Toledo, though historians still argue whether that was his apprentice or possibly just a very lucky blacksmith with artistic leanings. You trace your finger over the curling ink. The handle was shaped like a lion, no surprise, but the bowl slightly off-center, almost asymmetrical, not flawed, but intentional. Symbolic, perhaps? You ask Stefano. He shrugs again. They say it was made to pour oil, not soup, used in only one rite, once a year, always by the same person. You blink. Which rite? He peers at you over the rim of his parchment. The ceremony of the cleansing of the palms. You've never heard of it, which isn't entirely surprising. The Vatican has at least 314 rites that not even the cardinals fully understand, but still. A spoon carved with loving detail, made for a single rite no one speaks of. That's odd. Even here, you sit with that for a moment, the weight of it. What kind of power does a spoon carry when it's used only once a year by only one person in a rite so obscure it doesn't appear in most records? And then Stefano, as if reading your mind, mutters, "The last person to use it died 3 weeks later. Accident. Fell from a bell tower. It wasn't even ringing it, just visiting." You arch a brow. Coincidence. He rolls his eyes. This place is built on coincidence. And marble. And guilt. You thank him and leave your mind buzzing. Outside, the Vatican courtyard is filling with sunlight. Choir boys cross the square, sleeves flapping like reluctant wings. A nun argues quietly with a cook over lentils. A cat with an eye patch stares at you from the basilica roof. But you're thinking about that lion-shaped handle. The shimmer of mica, the asymmetry, and you're thinking about Cardinal Bartolomeo. Because if anyone knew how to interpret obscure rituals, it was he. You find him in the library. Not the grand one filled with frescoes and maps the size of dinner tables, but a narrow room behind it where footnotes go to gossip. He's seated beneath a window, squinting at a manuscript with a magnifying glass carved from rose quartz. He doesn't look surprised to see you. "You're here about the spoon," he says without turning. You nod. He sighs. "It was never just a spoon. You wait," he continues. "It was a key, not literal, mind you, symbolic. It opened the permission, ritual hierarchy. Only those who had held it could lead certain prayers. It's not about the object, it's about who's trusted with it." You sit across from him, the wooden chair, creaking like a ship settling. Then why hide it? He looks up finally, and there's a glint in his eye you don't entirely like, because some doors should stay closed, and some spoons should never shimmer in the wrong hands. You leave without another word. Down the hall you pass Brother Giacomo, the sleepy spoon polisher, who's now attempting to balance a scroll on his head while walking. Possibly penance, possibly boredom. He doesn't see you. He's humming, off-key. You walk back toward the pantry, now glowing with late morning sun. The chest is still there, still locked, and still missing one spoon. Only now you're not sure the spoon was ever really lost. Maybe it was hidden. Maybe it was used. Or maybe, just maybe, it shimmered one last time, off-center lion-clawed, and opened a door you haven't yet found. You don't go to lunch. You tell yourself it's because you're too busy solving a mystery, that you're deep in a spoon-shaped conspiracy of ecclesiastical proportions. But really, it's because your stomach is already full of questions. And the biggest one of all is still echoing in your head. Some spoons should never shimmer in the wrong hands. That's what Cardinal Bartolomeo said. Not quite a confession, not quite a warning, but it clings to your thoughts like incense smoke on velvet. So you do what any rational Vatican wanderer would do after being vaguely threatened by an elderly man in silk robes. You retrace the spoon's steps literally, according to the inventory note now stained with your thumbprint and a bit of anxiety. Spoon 6 was expected to appear at the Chrism Mass the previous Tuesday, a yearly ritual where oils are blessed and priests renew their vows. It's solemn, scented, highly choreographed. But that year in 1483, the Mass had been moved last minute to a secondary chapel due to repairs in the main nave. Those repairs, coincidentally, or perhaps not, we were funded by none other than Cardinal Benedetto, who, as we've already established, has the memory of a turnip, but the timing of a fox. So now you're heading toward the alternate chapel, or more precisely, to the cloisters that wrap around it like a marble halo. The Vatican cloisters are rarely visited except by monks, masons, and the occasional pigeon seeking spiritual enlightenment. The air is cooler here, thicker too. The kind that makes you instinctively lower your voice even when you're alone. Each archway frames a sliver of sky. Each column is etched with saints, most stoic ones suspiciously cross-eyed. And then, just past a statue of Saint Apollonia, brandishing a set of tongs with suspicious enthusiasm, you see something adore. Small, barely visible, nestled into the stone wall like a secret it forgot to keep. You try the handle. It opens with a sigh. Inside, it's dark naturally. Your candle barely cuts the gloom. The room is small square and smells like old linen and lemon balm. Clay jars line the walls. A stack of folded vestments slumps in one corner like a sleeping friar. A silver censer wrapped in waxed cloth sits atop a crate labeled "Lent Only, Do Not Touch." And then you see it. A basin, stone, shallow, sitting quietly in the corner, as if it's always been there. The surface water is still like glass, and floating at the center, a single strand of red silk. You lean in. The silk twists lazily like it's dreaming. Etched into the rim of the basin is a Latin phrase, per manus puras lux transit. Through pure hands light passes. It's the kind of phrase you'd expect on a stained glass window, or maybe a very poetic soap brand. But here it feels heavy. You don't touch the water. Something about it warns you not to. Not with words, but with weight. You straighten up and scan the room again. There are no spoons here. But you don't leave empty-handed. Because this basin is quiet. The overlooked stone bowl might just be where the spoon was meant to end up. Or begin. You step back into the cloisters, blinking in the daylight, and that's when you spot him. Cardinal Benedetto. He's standing across the square, bent slightly over a walking stick that he absolutely does not need. He's speaking with a stone mason who looks like he'd rather be chiseling in silence. The cardinal gestures animatedly about arches or light or possibly lunch. You approach quietly. He sees you, smiles like a man who knows things and has already decided how many of them to share. You're following the spoon, he says, not unkindly. You raise an eyebrow. It returned to Brother Giacomo's robe. You wouldn't happen to know how it got there. He chuckles. I never concern myself with the transportation habits of blessed objects. They go where they're needed, or where they're summoned. You press further. Did you move the Christ Mass to hide the spoon or to use it? He leans in slightly. Both, he says. Sometimes we hide things by placing them in plain view. Other times we use them where no one is looking. And now and then we do both and call it liturgy. That's not helpful, but it's very Vatican. You ask him what the spoon actually does. He pauses. Depends on the hands that hold it. Before you can question him further, he turns back to the mason and resumes a spirited debate about mortar consistency. You walk away. Again, full of more answers than clarity. But one thing he said lingers. Depends on the hands that hold it. So who's held it recently? You follow the only real lead you've got left, the kitchens. And yes, they're exactly as chaotic as you remember. The scent hits you first. Garlic, rosemary, burnt onions, and something vaguely sweet you can't place, possibly holy caramel. You dodge 3 cooks, a junior priest covered in flour, and a kitchen boy carrying a pot so large it might contain a saint. At the back, in a quieter corridor lined with hanging herbs and empty baskets, you find her. Madame Leonora, head cook, Iron Will, and the only person in the Vatican who once slapped a cardinal with a trout. She sees you coming and doesn't look impressed. You're the one bothering everyone about spoons. She grunts. You nod. She sighs. Follow me. She leads you past steaming pots and open flames to a narrow drawer under a shelf of vinegar bottles. Inside, spoons. Dozens. Silver. Wood. Pewter. All unmarked, all worn from use. She picks one up, holds it to the light. This one was used Tuesday, she says. A young novice brought it in, said it was special, wouldn't say his name. Just handed it to me like it was made of gold and sin. You look closer. It's not spoon 6, but close. The curve of the handle, the faint lion motif, a sibling. You ask if she's seen the real spoon 6. She shrugs. I don't catalog spoons. They come in, they go out. They end up in the honey pot or the holy oil, sometimes both. You thank her, begin to turn away. And then there in the corridor he appears. Brother Giacomo, again, standing upright, asleep, holding something. You approach. It's a spoon. Ivory. Off-center bowl. Lion-hilted. Spoon 6. You gently take it from his fingers. He stirs. Oh, he murmurs. Was in my robe. Again. Don't know how. You stare at him. He smiles faintly, sleepwalking through wakefulness. I dreamed of a lion, he says, weeping, and I was trying to feed it oil. But the oil turned to light. You hold the spoon tightly. It's warm. You don't take the spoon back to the pantry. Not yet. Instead, you hold it. Not like an object, like a question. It has weight, not just the physical kind, but the kind that settles in your hand and refuses to be put down. Spoon 6 is warm, as if it remembers being held, remembers being used. The ivory is smooth but not sterile. The lion carved into the handle is small, its expression unreadable, somewhere between yawning and roaring. The bowl of the spoon curves subtly off-center again, not an error, but a design. You turn it over gently, searching for anything that might explain why this particular spoon has sent cardinals into riddles, monks into dreams, and you into every damp corridor in the apostolic palace. What kind of spoon can reappear in someone's robe after vanishing without a sound? What kind of utensil is passed in silence, used in secret, then whispered about like a ghost? You glance down at Giacomo, now fast asleep, on a barrel of something pickled, one hand still curled in the air as if holding on to a dream. You leave him there. It seems unfair to wake him after all. He may be the only one in the Vatican who's been using this spoon exactly as it wants to be used, without explanation, without ambition, without expectation. Instead, you carry spoon 6 with you through the southern hallway. The light here is gentler, slanting through narrow stained glass windows that paint your robes in jewel tones. A novice passes, barely glancing your way. He hums the wrong tune to a hymn and drops a lemon. You decide to interpret that as a sign to visit the archives. Again. But this time, you go deeper. You've already seen the drawer of sacred utensils and the sketches from long-dead artisans. You've already met Brother Stefano and his legendary ability to insult you in Latin without changing facial expression. But there's one place you haven't searched, the marginalia cabinet. Yes, marginalia. The bits written in the margins of manuscripts are notes, doodles, complaints, and secrets. Most readers skip them. But you're looking for a pattern that doesn't belong in the main story. You descend a narrow staircase near the scriptorium where light grows dim and dust becomes its weather system. At the base is a locked cabinet. You knock twice. It opens slowly. Brother Lucas appears, taller than expected, smells faintly of cloves and parchment. Doesn't speak, he simply nods when he sees the spoon in your hand, as if this was bound to happen eventually. He opens the cabinet. Inside are scrolls. Hundreds, thin, irregular, many written on reused parchment. Some are shopping lists that turned into sermons. Others are entire confessions crammed into a margin, beside a recipe for rabbit stew. You ask for anything referencing Spoon 6. He pulls 3 scrolls without hesitation. You unroll the first. The handwriting is cramped and uneven, clearly someone writing in the dark. It reads, "Today I polished the spoon and felt nothing. But 2 days ago it shimmered. The bowl held light, not oil. Brother Matteo said not to speak of it. So I wrote it here. If someone finds this, tell the spoon I'm sorry." The second is even shorter. It weeps in rooms with too much gold. And the third, it's a drawing. Crude but unmistakable. The spoon held above a small fire. Beneath it, a lion not roaring but curled as if asleep. Beside it, a single phrase. It must never be used twice in the same heart. You stare at that line for a long time. What does it mean? Does it refer to the user, the one anointed, the one served, or the spoon itself? You thank Brother Lucas, who has already returned to his incense-scented silence, and head for the basilica. Not for mass, just to sit. The nave is quiet. Sunlight pools on the marble floor like spilled wine. Far above, cherubs carved into the ceiling look down with that usual expression, slightly condescending amusement. You sit in the third pew from the front. Hold Spoon 6 in your lap. And that's when you remember something. In the margin of the chrism ledger, the same one that mentioned Cardinal B and the Tuesday rite, there was another scribble. You didn't think much of it at the time. It looked like a checklist. But now it clicks. It read, "Oil, linen, light, and the spoon. Always the spoon. Never forget the 5th element." You look at Spoon 6 again. Its bowl gleams faintly in the light. 5th element, you rise. Back through the basilica, down a side stairwell, past the vestry, through the corridor behind the sacristy. You're going to the chapel of Saint Sylvester. It's rarely used now. Small, tucked between 2 larger chapels, like a whisper between speeches. But it has one particular feature, a mosaic on the floor. Geometric. intricate, said to represent the order of heaven, or possibly the seating chart from the Council of Constance. Interpretations vary. You kneel at the center of the mosaic. In the middle is a circle, and inside it 5 inlaid shapes: flame water, windstone, and a space. Just wide enough for a spoon. You hesitate. Place spoon 6 into the 5th slot. Nothing happens. At first, and then softly, the stone beneath your knees warms. The spoon glows faintly. No fire, no drama, just a shimmer, like sunlight on water seen through tears. You sit back. A small drawer beneath the mosaic clicks open. You wouldn't have noticed it except your knee bumped it. Inside is a scroll, untouched, unlabeled, unsealed. You open it slowly. Inside, a prayer, written in a hand you don't recognize. Old, precise. The words are simple, humble, a blessing for the one who carries burdens they do not understand. You take a breath. The spoon no longer feels heavy, not because it weighs less, but now you understand it was never missing. It was waiting. You don't return the spoon to the sacred storeroom right away. Not because you want to keep it as evidence, though a small part of you is tempted, but because in some strange way, you feel you haven't yet understood what it's trying to say. Spoon 6 sits in your hand, warm and oddly weighty, not in a physical sense, but in the way some objects seem to carry the memory of every hand that's ever held them. As if the spoon itself remembers. The weight of touch, of duty, of quiet rituals performed in silence and forgotten by history. You tilt it in the light. The lion carved on the handle is familiar by now, but today something feels different. The lion's paws aren't grasping the handle as you'd expect. They're open, spread slightly outward, almost like they're offering something or letting it go. You wonder if that means anything. Maybe it's just decorative. Or maybe it's the final message in a long, slow puzzle carved centuries ago. This isn't a spoon for keeping. It's a spoon for giving. You walk slowly out of the chapel of St. Sylvester, where the floor mosaic opened a hidden drawer for you, where the scroll now tucked in your sleeve whispered a quiet blessing you didn't know you needed. Blessed be the burden that cannot be named, and the one who carries it anyway. You cross into a quieter corridor where the sun has softened to honey. The stones glow gently. Dust dances in golden beams like bits of forgotten song. You pass people, monks, novices, guards, and cats. No one notices the spoon in your hand. No one asks why you look like someone who has just finished reading a very old, very personal letter from a stranger. And then you do something unexpected. You head to the laundry. Yes, the laundry. Because in the Vatican, just like in life, many sacred things pass through soap and water before they ever find their proper place again. The laundry cloister is tucked behind the wine cellar and smells of lye, rosemary, hot steam, and beeswax. You push open the door and step into a world entirely unlike the marbled halls above. Here, ropes strung across the ceiling hold surplices, altar cloths, vestments, and the occasional pair of papal undergarments no one likes to talk about. A nun is scrubbing something suspicious off a bishop's sleeve. Someone else is ironing a pile of cassocks with the focus of a surgeon. At the center of it all is the person you came for. Sister Beatrix, she is legendary. said to have folded 200 linen purificators during an earthquake without misaligning a single crease. Once reportedly slapped a priest with a damp stole when he tried to drop a wax-stained alb into the ordinary wash pile. She is also, conveniently, the final guardian of items that pass through unnoticed. You find her by a copper basin, rubbing lavender oil into a stack of folded towels, with the serenity of someone who has truly surrendered to the chaos of her holy laundry empire. She doesn't look up when you approach. "I wondered when you'd come," she says. You pause. "You knew." "Of course I knew," she says flatly. Whenever a sacred object shows up in the linens unannounced, someone always shows up, looking dazed a few days later. You show her the spoon, her hands still. She looks at it, then she nods. "Yes," she says, "that's the one." You ask her if it passed through here. She tilts her head. 3 days ago. Wrapped in linen, smelled faintly of smoke and ash. No tag, no note. Just nestled between a bishop's cuffs and the paschal candle drape. "What did you do with it?" you ask. She shrugs. "Washed it. What else would I do? But I didn't scrub it. I soaked it in warm water with chamomile and rosemary, and I sang." You blink. You sang. She nods again. Not hymns, not words, just the kind of melody old women hum when they knit or peel apples. Songs with no names, songs that make things feel clean without touching them. You're not sure whether you're enchanted or confused. After that, she continues, "I wrapped it in a fresh cloth and left it on the altar linens table to dry." And then you ask. She smiles. "It was gone by morning." You stare. Gone. She shrugs, wiping her hands on her apron. Not gone like stolen. Gone like a finished. Like it had moved on. She reaches into a drawer beneath the basin and pulls out a folded square of linen. Unwraps it. Inside is nothing. But the shape of the spoon remains. A faint indent in the fabric. A ghost of its weight. She hands it to you gently. "It stayed warm the whole time," she says quietly. "Even underwater." You take the cloth. It's soft, slightly fragrant, and somehow grateful. You leave the laundry slower than you entered, and for the first time you don't feel like you're supposed to do anything. Not solve, not uncover, not restore. The spoon was never yours to return. It returned itself. You just helped it feel welcome again. As you pass back through the outer courtyard, the air has cooled. The sun is slipping behind the tiled rooftops. Doves flutter to their evening roosts. A novice drops a basket of bread and swears under his breath in Latin. You don't correct him. Instead, you walk past the pantry, past the library, past the chapel, and stop outside the sacristy. Inside, Brother Angelo is polishing a candlestick and humming something that sounds like Gregorian chant, remixed with kitchen gossip. You step inside, place spoon 6 on the linen-covered table beside him. He looks at it, blinks, then says softly, "Welcome back." And that's it. No fanfare, no revelation, no dramatic music from the heavens, just acknowledgement. As you step back outside, the Vatican seems to exhale around you. A breeze moves through the cloisters like the final page of a well-loved book. The spoon is where it needs to be, and for once, so are you. The next morning arrives, not with revelations, but with the soft, scratchy rhythm of a broom brushing past your door. You're already awake, though. Awake is generous. More accurately, you're in that peculiar, Vatican-adjacent state of semi-consciousness where your body is still tangled in bed sheets and your mind is tangled in metaphors. You've spent most of the night lying still, eyes open, listening to the wind shift through fig leaves outside the high window, thinking about lions, oil, dreams, laundry, and spoons. Mostly spoons. You sit up, blink against the pale golden light that filters through your curtain, and wonder not for the first time whether you've officially become one of those people who investigate spiritual cutlery for a living. Then comes a knock, 3 soft taps, hesitant, wooden. You open the door to find Brother Stefano standing there, ink on his sleeve. A scroll in one hand, half a slice of dense Vatican walnut bread in the other. He offers them both to you wordlessly. You accept them as if this is normal now, which in a way it is. As he turns to leave, he pauses, head slightly tilted over his shoulder. It shimmered again, he murmurs. You blink. What did he glances? Down the hallway before replying, the ledger. And with that, he disappears into the gloom, robes whispering behind him like punctuation at the end of an unfinished sentence. You return to your modest cell, sit on the edge of your bed and nibble the bread figs and walnuts today if you're lucky. Then you unroll the scroll. It's familiar. It's the inventory record, the same one you consulted when this all began, Section 7. The next morning arrives, not with revelations, but with the soft, scratchy rhythm of a broom brushing past your door. You're already awake, though. Awake is generous. More accurately, you're in that peculiar Vatican-adjacent state of semi-consciousness, where your body is still tangled in bed sheets and your mind is tangled in metaphors. You've spent most of the night lying still, eyes open, listening to the wind shift through fig leaves outside the high window, thinking about lions, oil dreams, laundry and spoons. Mostly spoons. You sit up, blink against the pale golden light that filters through your curtain, and wonder not for the first time whether you've officially become one of those people who investigate spiritual cutlery for a living. Then comes a knock. 3 soft taps, hesitant, wooden. You open the door to find Brother Stefano standing there, ink on his sleeve. A scroll in one hand, half a slice of dense Vatican walnut bread in the other. He offers them both to you wordlessly. You accept them as if this is normal now, which in a way it is. As he turns to leave, he pauses, head slightly tilted over his shoulder. It shimmered again, he murmurs. You blink. What did... He glances down the hallway before replying. The ledger. And with that, he disappears into the gloom, robes whispering behind him like punctuation at the end of an unfinished sentence. You return to your modest cell, sit on the edge of your bed, and nibble the bread, IGs, and walnuts today, if you're lucky. Then you unroll the scroll. It's familiar. It's the inventory record, the same one you consulted when this all began, brittle parchment red ribbon, and the lingering smell of clove oil and candle wax. You remember the note, the one about Cardinal B, the mysterious temporary transfer, and the complete lack of useful detail. But now there's something new. A fresh line of ink, small, tidy, centered beneath the others, as if waiting patiently to be noticed. Spoon 6 returned. Cycle complete, rites observed. Leave undisturbed until the next beginning. You run your finger across the line. The ink is dry, but not ancient. Recently added, but not by Stefano or any archivist you know. The handwriting is elegant, symmetrical, with just a hint of flourished finality. Like someone who writes not just for the record, but for rhythm. The phrase "until the next beginning" sticks in your brain like a soft echo. Not ending, beginning. You tuck the scroll under your arm and dress slowly. The air in your room smells faintly of warm stone and the dried lavender bundle tucked above the lintel. Outside, someone is tuning the chapel bell with a hammer that is too large for the task. Somewhere else, someone is arguing in Latin about chickens. You ignore them both. Instead, you follow your feet, which by now know where to take you. They lead you past the basilica and toward the pantry. Not because you expect the spoon to be there, it's not, but because the room has become, against all odds, familiar. A place where things go missing, yes, but also where things come home. The pantry is quiet. You sit on the old wooden bench beside the chest. You don't open it. You just rest your hand on the lid. The wood is warm in the morning sun, slightly rough with age, and carved with the faint pattern of wheat stalks and the papal keys. The chest doesn't hum with secrets anymore. If anything, it feels tired, like a theater set after closing night. Not sad, just still. And then footsteps, light, steady, purposeful. You look up and see Sister Beatrix approaching from the corridor, apron dusted with flower, sleeves rolled just slightly past the wrists, in a gesture that signals both practicality and unstoppable force. She's carrying a small, neatly folded bundle of cloth. Laundry, she says, tone flat as parchment. You raise an eyebrow. She's not known for small talk. Left in the folds of a chasuble, she explains, between the lining and the lace trim. I assume you'll want to see it. She hands it to you. The linen is soft, clean, and still faintly warm from the pressing table. You unfold it carefully. Inside, a pewter spoon, plain, unadorned, ordinary, utterly, spectacularly boring. You look at it, she looks at you. Then you both laugh quietly, gently, like people who know how rare such a moment is in a place full of incense bills, and incense allergies. You hold the spoon up to the light. No shimmer, no glow. Just a simple, serviceable curve and a handle, with the faintest suggestion of having been stirred through soup too many times. I thought you might appreciate one that doesn't talk back, Beatrix says with a shrug. You nod. I think I will. You carry it with you that afternoon. Not like a relic, not like a burden, just like a spoon. You walk through the outer cloister past students reciting Latin aloud to pigeons, past guards who absolutely are not napping behind statues, past the window where Cardinal Benedetto once allegedly dropped a chalice by accident during a moment of over-enthusiastic gesturing. Eventually, you find yourself in the garden behind the scriptorium. It's a quiet corner, often forgotten, where fig trees lean lazily over cracked marble benches, and the air smells like soil ink and warm basil. You sit, watch the light move, feel the pewter spoon resting in your palm like a cool thought. You reach down and gently nestle it into the earth at the base of a fig tree, not buried, not hidden, just placed, like a stone on a grave, like a bookmark in a favorite chapter, a quiet reminder. And you say softly, stay ordinary. Because in a world of relics and rituals, dreams, and disappearing silverware. Sometimes the most sacred thing isn't the object that glows, it's the one that doesn't. Brittle parchment, red ribbon, and the lingering smell of clove oil and candle wax. You remember the note, the one about Cardinal B, the mysterious temporary transfer, and the complete lack of useful detail. But now there's something new. A fresh line of ink, small, tidy, centered beneath, the others as if waiting patiently to be noticed. Spoon 6 returned. Cycle complete. Rites observed, leave undisturbed until the next beginning. You run your finger across the line. The ink is dry, but not ancient. Recently added, but not by Stefano or any archivist you know. The handwriting is elegant, symmetrical, with just a hint of flourished finality. Like someone who writes not just for the record, but for rhythm. The phrase "until the next beginning" sticks in your brain like a soft echo, not ending, beginning. You tuck the scroll under your arm and dress slowly. The air in your room smells faintly of warm stone and the dried lavender bundle tucked above the lintel. Outside, someone is tuning the chapel bell with a hammer that is absolutely too large for the task. Somewhere else, someone is arguing in Latin about chickens. You ignore them both. Instead, you follow your feet, which by now know where to take you. They lead you past the basilica and toward the pantry. Not because you expect the spoon to be there, it's not, but because the room has become, against all odds, familiar. A place where things go missing, yes, but also where things come home. The pantry is quiet. You sit on the old wooden bench beside the chest. You don't open it. You just rest your hand on the lid. The wood is warm in the morning sun, slightly rough with age, and carved with the faint pattern of wheat stalks and the papal keys. The chest doesn't hum with secrets anymore. If anything, it feels tired, like a theater set after closing night. Not sad, just still. And then footsteps, light, steady, purposeful. You look up and see Sister Beatrix approaching from the corridor, apron dusted with flower sleeves rolled just slightly past the wrists in a gesture that signals both practicality and unstoppable force. She's carrying a small, neatly folded bundle of cloth. Laundry, she says, tone flat as parchment. You raise an eyebrow. She's not known for small talk. Left in the folds of a chasuble, she explains, between the lining and the lace trim. I assume you'll want to see it. She hands it to you. The linen is soft, clean, and still faintly warm from the pressing table. You unfold it carefully. Inside, a pewter spoon, plain, unadorned, ordinary, utterly spectacularly boring. You look at it. She looks at you. Then you both laugh quietly, gently, like people who know how rare such a moment is in a place full of incense bills, and incense allergies. You hold the spoon up to the light. No shimmer, no glow, just a simple, serviceable curve and a handle with the faintest suggestion of having been stirred through soup too many times. I thought you might appreciate one that doesn't talk back, Beatrix says with a shrug. You nod. I think I will. You carry it with you that afternoon. Not like a relic, not like a burden, just like a spoon. You walk through the outer cloister past students reciting Latin aloud to pigeons, past guards who absolutely are not napping behind statues, past the window where Cardinal Benedetto once allegedly dropped a chalice by accident during a moment of over-enthusiastic gesturing. Eventually you find yourself in the garden behind the scriptorium. It's a quiet corner, often forgotten, where fig trees lean lazily over cracked marble benches, and the air smells like soil ink and warm basil. You sit, watch the light move, feel the pewter spoon resting in your palm like a cool thought. You reach down and gently nestle it into the earth at the base of a fig tree, not buried, not hidden, just placed, like a stone on a grave, like a bookmark in a favorite chapter, a quiet reminder. And you say softly, "Stay ordinary." Because in a world of relics and rituals, dreams and disappearing silverware, sometimes the most sacred thing isn't the object that glows, it's the one that doesn't. The Vatican, as you now understand with sleepy certainty, never really sleeps. It shifts, it sighs, it creaks a little. But sleep, no. It prefers to murmur. Even when the bells are quiet and the last wax-drenched candle has melted into its slow puddle of devotion, the halls hum like a warm kettle left on the stove. Stone by stone, the building seems to remember. Footsteps, prayers, arguments about cheese, all still echoing somewhere under the tiles. And tonight, lying in your modest little cell, you listen. You've tucked the plain pewter spoon on your windowsill, not because it's meaningful in the same way as spoon 6 was, but because it's there, and it stayed, and that somehow feels worth honoring. Moonlight slips past the stone mullions, landing in thin strips across the floor, like bookmarks in time. The spoon reflects a dull, honest gleam. No shimmer, no glow, no destiny humming from its handle. Just a spoon. A real, deliciously boring spoon. You rest your head back on the straw-filled pillow, stare at the wooden beams of the ceiling, and try to recall everything that's happened in the past few days. And then you give up, because none of it makes logical sense. But all of it feels right. You carried a spoon that glowed when held in silence. You found a scroll written in a hand no one could identify. You met cardinals who spoke like riddles wrapped in vestments. Nuns who believed that lavender oil could soothe both linen and relics. Archivists who swore scrolls sometimes wrote back. You dreamed of lions that wept, and you returned a sacred object, not because anyone told you to, but because it felt like the spoon had decided it was time to go home. You finally fall asleep. Not out of exhaustion, but with the quiet trust of someone who has done what they could and let the rest go. The morning arrives gently. There's no dramatic knock. No flickering candle was carried by a mysterious monk. Just the quiet clink of bowls in the hallway and the faint murmur of a choir practicing their vowels. You rise slowly, stretch, wash your face in the chipped ceramic basin with water, so cold it feels like penance. Your fingers trace the shape of the pewter spoon still sitting peacefully by the window. You smile. No shimmer today. Still. You slip it into your robe pocket just in case breakfast involves anything more adventurous than a crust of bread. Your feet guide you. They've developed their intelligence after so many loops through the Vatican, the pantry, the cloister, the archive, the sacristy, the chapel, the fig tree. You let them choose. They take you first to the pantry, still quiet, still faintly smelling of lentils, beeswax, and pepper. That's far too expensive. You nod to the chest that once held 5 spoons and one holy question. You don't open it. The mystery is no longer in there. Next stop, the archives. Brother Stefano is awake this time, or at least pretending. He's seated at the desk with one eye open, one hand in a scroll, and the other stirring tea that is unmistakably ink. He looks at you, shrugs, and says, "It's one of those mornings." You nod. You know the kind. He reaches under his desk and hands you something unexpected. A drawing, crude, childlike, done in faded red chalk. It shows a spoon, not spoon six, but a spoon resting under a tree. Next to it, a person sits cross-legged with what appears to be a bowl of soup and an expression of profound confusion. It showed up in the marginalia, Stefano says. No name. Just one word written underneath. Enough. You smile, thank him, and walk out. You're heading to the garden again. The one behind the scriptorium. The fig tree is blooming a little more today. The air is warm and damp, and filled with the smell of rosemary ink and the quiet labor of monks who would never admit to gardening as a spiritual practice, but absolutely do. The pewter spoon is still there, nestled at the base of the tree, a little dusty, a little tilted. You brush off a leaf that's landed across it like a blanket. And then you sit. You're not meditating, not exactly. You're not thinking of relics or lions or scrolls that glow. You're just present until a rustling sound interrupts your silence. You glance up. Two novices are running past the edge of the garden. One is brandishing two soup spoons like dueling swords. The other is yelling something about honor, which is hard to take seriously when their sandals are falling off. You stifle a laugh. Another novice follows behind them, slightly more composed, carrying a small wooden tray. She sees you, pauses, then walks over. Would you like some soup? She asks, holding out the tray. You peer into the bowl. Lentils? Of course it's lentils. You accept. She sets the tray on the stone bench beside you, gives a shy little bow, and disappears after her compatriots. You stare at the steam curling up from the surface of the soup. You don't eat right away. You take your time. You reach into your pocket, withdraw the pewter spoon, and hold it in your hand for a moment. It's cool, solid, comfortingly unmagical. And then you eat. Slowly, carefully, with small scoops. And with each bite, you find something that's been missing. Not revelation, not closure, just peace. The soup is good. Not miraculous, not divine, but warm and honest. And as you eat under the fig tree with the pewter spoon in your hand and the taste of simplicity on your tongue, you think, maybe the greatest mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Maybe they're just meant to be held, stirred gently, tasted fully, and placed quietly back into the soil when you're done. You wake up the next morning with that strange sensation of having forgotten something important. Not like you missed a prayer bell or accidentally put on your robe inside out again, but more like something shifted overnight. Like the world rearranged itself slightly while you were dreaming about figs, staircases, and sentient furniture, which, let's be honest, happens more often than you admit. You blink at the ceiling for a while. The wooden beams above your head haven't moved. The same slanted sunlight creeps through the curtain and draws a golden line across the stone floor. Your feet still stick out from the too-short blanket, and your pillow still smells faintly of basil and old ink. But something's different. You sit up. The pewter spoon is still on the windowsill, good, still humble, still boring, still vaguely comforting in the way only a utensil with zero magical powers can be. You pick it up and roll it between your fingers, cool, balanced, entirely unremarkable, perfect. And then somewhere deep in the southern corridor, a small bell rings. Not the dramatic fire in the sacristy bell or the solemn. Someone has passed on its bell. This one is light, almost sheepish. A bell with doubts. A bell that would knock twice and apologize. You sigh, pull on your sandals, and let your feet carry you toward it. They know the way by now. Through the warm archways of the cloister, past the herb garden, where someone is whispering aggressively at a patch of uncooperative sage, down the corridor, where a young novice is chasing a cat with what looks like a liturgical ribbon. Eventually you arrive at the southern annex, a dusty hallway of forgotten things and misplaced intentions. No one comes here unless sent. And if they are sent, it's usually to sort something. That something is never defined. You push open the creaky oak door at the end, and there he is, Cardinal Bartolomeo. Of course, standing in front of a glass cabinet, hands clasped behind his back, staring at a wooden spoon with the sort of intensity usually reserved for relics, heretics, or very good olives. He doesn't turn when you enter, doesn't flinch. Did you know, he begins, that in the 14th century, visiting bishops were occasionally given wooden spoons engraved with blessings? You blink. Engraved. He hums, scratched badly. Some said, "Peace upon thee." Some say, "Dog, bless this meal." A few, according to notes, may have just been recipes, or possibly curses. Scholars still debate. You look at the spoon he's admiring. It's crooked, cracked down one side. The label reads spoon. French, possibly carved by mistake, possibly used as a bookmark. You nod slowly. So, why are you here? He turns, eyes sharp behind heavy lids. I could ask you the same. You shrug. I followed a bell. He smiles faintly. Ah, and what did you expect to find? You glance around. The room is filled with shelves, cabinets, and drawers. Each holds something peculiar. A gilded fork missing its tines, a broken compass shaped like a cherub, a candle stub labeled possibly important. I didn't expect anything, you say. That's why I came. He raises an eyebrow. Most people don't go looking for silence. You smile. Most people don't lose spoons on purpose either. A soft chuckle escapes him. Touché. You walk slowly along the rows of objects. Some are ancient. Others, not so much. There's a pewter dish with a chipped edge, a monocle on a velvet cushion, a folded note that simply reads, "Ask Lucian." You don't. And then, in the far corner behind a dusty barrel of what might once have been incense or fermented lentils, you see it. A small wooden box. No label, no lock. Just sitting there as if it's always been waiting. You crouch, gently pry it open. Inside, a spoon, but not one of silver, ivory, or even pewter. It's made entirely of stone. Marble, you think. Pale gray, veined with soft blue. Heavy, cold. The bowl is shallow, the handle thick and uneven, as though carved by someone who'd never seen a spoon, but had been told about them in great detail by someone with enthusiasm and poor memory. It is beautiful and deeply, wonderfully useless. You lift it carefully, run your thumb along the curve. There are tiny tool marks, evidence of a hand that worked slowly, patiently, with neither haste nor particular purpose. You whisper why. And the spoon in its infinite silence says, because someone needed to try. You return it to the box, not because it's dangerous or magical, but because it feels finished, like a sentence that didn't need to go anywhere else. Bartolomeo has wandered to the other end of the room, now muttering something about scallop spoons and misguided alchemy. You leave him to it. You walk. Not quickly, not urgently, just steadily. Back through the chapel, where sunlight spills across empty pews like spilled honey. Past the sacristy, where Brother Angelo is polishing the same candlestick for the fourth time today, probably just for the smell of it. Through the archive, where Brother Stefano is napping with a feather quill stuck to his forehead. And finally, to the garden. The fig tree welcomes you back like an old friend. The pewter spoon is still there, still nestled in the dirt at the base of the trunk, still silent, still entirely unbothered by its lack of glowing destiny. You sit beside it, not because you have to, not because the spoon is demanding your attention, but because it's quiet, and because today you have nowhere else to be. You take a deep breath. The air is warm, earthy, sweet, and then you hear it. Laughter. From across the lawn, two novices are playing some sort of game with bread rolls and ladles. It is chaotic. It is not approved. It is perfect. A third novice approaches with a small tray. "Would you like some soup?" she asks. Again, you smile. "Yes, thank you." She hands you the bowl of lentils again, because fate has a sense of humor, and disappears. You pull out the pewter spoon from your robe, settle the bowl on your lap, and begin to eat. Slowly, carefully. Like a person who understands that not everything has to glow to be holy. Like someone who's learned that spoons, just like people, are sometimes sacred, sometimes ordinary, and sometimes both at once. And that is more than enough. Evening arrives softly at the Vatican. Not in a rush, not with trumpets, just slowly, like warm water filling a cool basin. The light dims by degrees. Gold turns amber. Amber slides into gray. Shadows stretch across polished tiles like lazy cats. And the walls, so used to holding sound, begin to exhale it instead. You've eaten your soup. You've walked your loops. You've done precisely nothing productive today. And somehow that feels important. The pewter spoon is still in your robe pocket. It's been there all day, not out of superstition, but because your hand has gotten used to its weight. You like the way it sits, unbothered, present. As if after all the shimmering and disappearing and reappearing, this is the kind of spoon you trust. You decide to take a walk, not a solve the mystery walk, not even an accidentally end up in a secret archive walk, just a walk. The kind you take when the day is ending, your mind is soft, and your legs want to remember every corridor before night falls completely. You begin as you often do now near the pantry. The storeroom is locked, not with drama, just politely closed. As if it knows its role in this story is over and it's ready for a quiet retirement. You nod to the door. You imagine it nods back, past the kitchens where the smell of stew and herbs lingers. A pot clangs in the background, someone's cleaning up, or possibly losing an argument with a ladle. Past the laundry where Sister Beatrix is finishing her folding with slow, deliberate movements. She sees you, raises an eyebrow, and points to a robe someone hung on the wrong hook. You correct it. She smiles slightly. You continue. Eventually, and without really meaning to, you arrive at a part of the building you haven't visited since this all began. The ceremonial storeroom. The door is still slightly crooked on its hinge. Still creaks like an old thought when you push it open. Inside, the air is cooler than in the hallway. Still smells faintly of wax rosemary. And something else you've come to associate with quiet things that used to be important. You walk past the old shelves, the forgotten drawers, the velvet-lined boxes containing objects no one has touched in years. And there is the wooden chest, the one that once held the 6 sacred spoons. The one that sent you chasing silver and symbolism all over the Vatican. You kneel beside it almost automatically. You don't open it. You just rest your hand on the lid. There's no thrum of magic, no glow, no scroll sliding out from under the floorboards. Just stillness. You sit down beside it. The floor is cold through the fabric of your robe. It doesn't matter. You think about all the places the missing spoon led you, the conversations, the question, the slow moments that unfolded like pages you didn't know were part of your book. And most of all, you think about how it ended, quietly, with the spoon returning itself, with you returning yourself. Somewhere along the way, the line between the object and the meaning blurred, and what started as a mystery became a ritual. Not one defined by incense or Latin, but by motion, by presence. You smile softly. And then for no real reason, you stand up and walk to a drawer near the back of the room. It's small. You've passed it before. Never opened it. Now you do. Inside is a folded linen napkin, nothing else. But on the underside, someone has stitched 3 words in pale gold thread. Steady, empty, full. You refold it, replace it gently, close the drawer, and walk out. Back into the warm corridor light. Back into the world that always felt a little too loud until you remembered how to listen. You end your walk naturally at the fig tree. By now, the garden feels like a second room, like a cloister without walls. The branches above rustle gently, shaped by evening wind and time. You sit, not because you need answers, but because the questions have finally learned how to rest. You pull the pewter spoon from your pocket, turn it in your hand. The curve is smooth now from days of idle rubbing, from laps around the basilica, from soup and dust and long thoughts about lions. You place it down in the soil beside you, where it's been before. Then, with a satisfied little sigh, you lie back on the stone bench and let your eyes drift up. Above you, nothing dramatic, just branches, sky, and the first few stars blinking in like shy guests at a long, slow banquet. You feel the cool of the stone beneath your back, the warmth of your breath as it settles, and you realize finally that the story isn't really about what we lose or what we find. It's about how we carry it in between. And maybe, just maybe, it's also about spoons, especially the ones that don't shimmer. You wake before the bell, not because of any dream, not because of a sound, just because your eyes open and the light is different. It's that quiet kind of early light, the one that slips in sideways and respectfully doesn't hit you directly in the face. The kind of light that says, no pressure. Wake up when you're ready, but you're ready. You sit up slowly. There's no rush today, no missing relic, no monks whispering cryptic riddles, no glowing linen. Just a robe, a basin of cold water, and your pewter spoon sitting faithfully on the windowsill, as it has every morning this week. You hold the spoon in your palm for a moment. It's cold, solid, steady. You say good morning to it, not because you expect it to respond, but because you've said good morning to stranger things this week, like an olive that looked exactly like Pope Innocent III. You rise, dress, and slip on your sandals. Then, with no particular plan, you begin to walk. The Vatican is extra quiet this early. You pass two novices carrying a folded rug between them like it's the body of a heretic. A cat yawns at you from the top of a stairwell. The incense hasn't even been lit yet. You decide to go somewhere you've never gone before. The old bell tower. Not the grand one that shakes the rooftops and startles pigeons across Rome. No, this is the small bell tower halfway up the southern wing. It rings maybe twice a year. People forget it exists. It's the kind of bell that only tolls when someone dies quietly and unremarkably. And even then, it asks first. You've passed the entrance a dozen times. The wooden door always looked slightly out of place, too narrow, too humble. Today, for reasons even you don't fully understand, you push it open. It's unlocked? Of course it is. Inside, the air is dusty, cool, and pleasantly full of cobwebs that seem to have unionized. The staircase is made of stone, worn down by centuries of cautious feet. You climb slowly, not because it's hard, but because you feel like you're being watched by the building itself. Like the walls want to know what you're doing in a place this forgotten. When you reach the top, you find a room no bigger than a monk's cell. Slanted ceiling. A small arched window overlooking the rooftops. The bell itself hangs low from a beam small enough to be charming, large enough to be respected. But that's not what catches your eye. On the ledge beside the bell, just sitting there, as if it always has, is a spoon. You stare at it for a moment, then laugh softly. Of course, you say out loud. Of course there's a spoon in the bell tower. You walk over and pick it up. This one is different. It's made of bronze, heavier than pewter, but smaller. The bowl is shallow. The handle is simple, but not plain. It's been worn down by fingers, maybe hundreds of them, over hundreds of years. It's not ceremonial, it's not ornamental, it's practical. You sit beside it on the narrow wooden bench, place it on your knee, and stare out the window. The rooftops glow gold in the morning sun. Somewhere far below, someone's arguing over herbs. A pigeon lands with a soft thump beside you and looks deeply unimpressed. You turn the spoon in your hand. There are no engravings, no holy seals, no glimmer. But it feels like a spoon someone once cared about. Maybe they used it every day. Maybe they carried it in their robe like you've been carrying yours. Maybe they forgot it here. Or maybe they left it on purpose as a kind of punctuation mark in their life. You rest it gently back on the ledge and sit in the quiet for a while longer. You're not looking for signs. You're not waiting for messages. You're just sitting. And that feels sacred in its way. Eventually, your legs remind you they've been bent at an awkward angle for too long, so you stand, stretch, and begin your descent. On your way down, you hum something. You're not sure what it is. Possibly a hymn. Possibly something you overheard a nun mutter at a stubborn curtain. You pass Sister Beatrix in the corridor. She gives you a once-over. You climb something she asks. You shrug, just stares. She squints. Was it dusty very? She nods. Then I forgive you, for now. You smile and keep walking. By late morning, the Vatican had woken fully. Bells ring, robes flutter. Incense smoke curls through the corridors like a daydream in search of a window. You make your way to the garden behind the scriptorium. The fig tree is there, as always, steady, silent, full of leaves that don't ask questions. On the stone bench beneath it is a small tray, bread, a bowl of lentil soup, a folded cloth napkin, no note. You sit down, you reach into your robe, pull out the pewter spoon. It still fits your hand like it was made for you, and as you begin to eat slowly without urgency, you realize this is the ritual now, not relic hunting, not glowing mosaics, not scrolls that write back, just this, sitting, breathing, eating soup with the same spoon each day, because it reminds you to go slow. You don't need another relic. You don't need a new mystery. What you have is this moment, and a spoon that asks for nothing except to be used gently, again and again. The soup is warm, earthy, comforting, like being remembered. And as the fig tree rustles softly above you, and the breeze carries in the smell of basil and wet stone, you think, there are sacred things that shimmer, and there are sacred things that don't, and both belong. You wake to the soft thump of a fig hitting the ground. Not a metaphorical fig, an actual fig, dropped, you assume, by gravity, and perhaps a bird with commitment issues. It's early afternoon. You must have dozed off under the fig tree again. That's been happening more often lately, not from boredom exactly, but from a sort of deep exhale. Your body seems to be taking after days of unexpected clues, missing objects, and the spiritual weight of so many spoons. Today feels blank. Not in a sad way, in a linen on the clothesline kind of way. Clean, unwritten. You brush a fig leaf off your robe, adjust your belt, and stand. Time to walk. No destination, just a stroll to see what the day wants from you. The Vatican in mid-afternoon is warm, bustling, but not hurried. You pass 3 monks arguing about chickpeas, 2 pigeons fighting over a crust of bread, and a very serious nun sketching architectural diagrams into the dust with a stick. You find yourself, without really intending to, back in the archives. No one stops you anymore. Either they've given up trying to redirect you, or they've decided you must be doing something holy in your own slightly bent way. The archive room is cool as ever, its walls thick with the scent of old parchment beeswax and something faintly peppery. You nod to the custodian, who is deep in a scroll that appears to be mostly drawings of forks. He grunts something approving, or possibly digestive. You meander past the drawers, not looking for anything in particular, until you see it, a small brass plaque you hadn't noticed before, almost hidden behind a stack of hymnals. The plaque reads Mesca liturgical implements, odd or unverified. You grin. It's always the miscellaneous drawer, isn't it? You slide it open. It sticks slightly, then gives with a groan like a retiring bishop. Inside, a jumble of items, wrapped in linen and labeled with wildly inconsistent handwriting. A thurible shaped like a dragon. A wooden knife with the words, "For ceremonial custard, only burned into the hilt." And yes, of course, spoons. You pull one out at random. It's small silver with an ornate spiral at the handle's tip, and a shallow bowl so dented it looks like it's been stepped on by a camel. Someone has labeled it optimistically, possibly St. Dominic's sugar spoon. Another one is brass long-handled with holes punched into the bowl. Straining spoon incense ladle. Sacred tea filter. The tag reads only possibly used in blessing with honey. And then you find it. Not your spoon, but one very much like it. Pewter, simple. Worn smooth at the handle. The bowl still holds the curve of 1,000 small meals. There's no tag, no note, just presence. You turn it in your hands and feel a strange pang, not of recognition exactly, but of shared purpose. As if this spoon and yours once lived parallel lives. Maybe one stirred lentils in Florence while the other ladled barley stew in Avignon. Maybe they were cast from the same mold centuries ago, divided, scattered, and now quietly reuniting in a drawer no one's checked in 50 years. You place it back gently and smile. There's something comforting about knowing it's here, about knowing the archive keeps a track of even the small, the dented, the miscellaneous. You step back and turn ready to leave, only to stop when you see an old monk standing in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. He looks at you, then looks at the drawer. Found something, he asks, just spoons. He nods slowly. Then almost as an afterthought, he says, "They tend to find us not the other way around," and walks away. You stand there for a moment, oddly winded. Then you chuckle, shake your head, and head back toward the courtyard, thinking maybe today's mystery is simply the mystery of how many spoons one building can contain. At the courtyard fountain, you pause. The water gurgles softly. The fig tree sways. And beside the bench, someone has left a folded bit of parchment under a stone. You're not entirely surprised. This week has trained you to expect that if a message appears mysteriously, you should probably read it preferably before someone steps on it. You unfold it. It's a list, not a prayer, not a recipe, just a list of spoon-related incidents. Pewter spoon vanished during lentil, fast returned 2 days later. Inside a wine cask. Gilded spoon found embedded in plaster wall of infirmary. Suspect cat-related. The wooden spoon reappeared on the altar after 47 years missing. Ivory spoon reportedly sang when held during the winter solstice mass. Small tin spoon found glowing faintly near relic cabinet. No follow-up conducted. At the bottom in cramped handwriting, they go where they're needed. They stay until they're not. May yours stay just long enough. You fold the note, place it in your pocket, and sit. Your pewter spoon rests beside you on the bench, catching the sun on one side, casting a quiet shadow on the other. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to catalog or decode or solve. Sometimes the knowing is just this, that something small, slightly dented, and entirely ordinary has made your days feel steadier, and that's enough. You don't remember exactly how the invitation arrived. It might have been whispered during morning prayers, or scrawled on the corner of a bread list. Or maybe it was just the kind of thing that spreads by monastery osmosis, the way soup recipes and rumors about saints' toenails tend to do. But somehow, by the time the sun starts dragging its golden hem along the western cloister wall, you find yourself ambling toward the back garden, where an old picnic table has been dragged beneath a blooming olive tree and covered with what looks like someone's best altar linen. 12 spoons lie on top, not arranged ceremonially, exactly just laid out like napping dogs. A flickering candle sits in the middle, not particularly tall, slightly misshapen, smells faintly of time. Brother Matteo is already there, sleeves rolled up, hair wild in that "I just emerged from a 3-hour theological disagreement with a chicken" way. "Ah," he says, seeing you. "You brought the pewter one." You nod. He smiles. "Good. It deserves closure." You're not sure if he means you or the spoon. Others begin to arrive, quietly, thoughtfully. A small crowd of monks and kitchen staff and scribes who have accepted without question that a spoon deserves a farewell ceremony. Someone sets down a silver ladle like it's a family heirloom. Another arrives with a tiny, walnut-handled coffee spoon, which gets a few respectful nods. Sister Celestina produces what might be a dessert spork and places it on the cloth like she's laying a relic at a shrine. No one speaks for a while, then Brother Matteo clears his throat and begins. "We gather this evening not to venerate the object," he says, gesturing to the table, "but to honor the journey." A few people bow their heads. "The spoon," he continues, "has long been overlooked in our liturgical and culinary practices, overshadowed by the chalice, ignored in favor of the fork, misunderstood by the knife." A chuckle ripples through the group. "But this humble servant," he says, lifting a dented soup spoon, reverently has stirred, served, and sustained, without complaint, without glamour, without ever once asking to be made of gold. You glance down at your pewter friend. It's sitting there calmly nestled beside a chipped horn ladle and something that looks suspiciously like a monastic melon baller. Matteo invites each person one by one to share the story of their utensil. Brother Ambrosius goes first. He talks about a copper spoon he once used to make quince jam for a pope who never showed up. Still, he says the jam was divine. Sister Anselma follows, speaking about a long-handled tasting spoon passed down from her great-aunt, who claimed it had once been used to poison a corrupt abbot. She never proved it. Anselma shrugs. But it added flavor. Even the archivist steps forward, cradling what looks like an ornamental oyster fork. "Found this wedged in a manuscript about apocalyptic dreams," he mutters. "Figured it earned a moment." And then it's your turn. You pick up the pewter spoon. It's warm from the candlelight. Familiar. "I found it when I wasn't looking," you begin. "It wasn't where it was supposed to be, but it was where I needed it." A few heads nod. You go on. "It never performed miracles. It never solved the mystery. But it stayed with me, through lentils, through losses, through questions I stopped needing answered." You pause. "It's just a spoon, but it taught me how to hold things lightly." You place it back on the cloth. No one applauds, which feels right. The candle gutters. A breeze nudges the olive branches. Matteo closes the ceremony with a gentle prayer in Latin, something about tools, time, and the holiness of ordinary labor. You catch only fragments, but they're enough to coat the air with stillness. People begin to drift away. Some pick up their spoons. Some leave them behind. A few whisper things you can't quite hear to their utensils before slipping back into the shadows. You remain seated for a while. Eventually, Brother Matteo joins you, balancing 2 small clay cups of warm herbal wine. He hands you one. "To spoons," he says. You clink cups. The wine is sweet with a hint of basil. You sit in silence for a while. Then he says, "Do you know why people love stories about missing things?" You shake your head. Because we all think we've lost something. And the idea that something might come back, that a thing could vanish and still return, it's comforting. You think about that. Think about the spoon, about the archive, about the fig tree, about yourself. Then Matteo adds, "And sometimes when the thing doesn't come back, it's because you've become the one who holds the story instead." You nod slowly. And in that moment, you feel something shift. Not dramatically, just quietly. Like a spoon settling into the bottom of a drawer, right where it belongs. You finish your wine. And as you walk back through the dusky garden, past the linen that still covers the table, you look once more at the pewter spoon, still resting there, glowing faintly in the fading light. You don't take it. It's okay to let it rest. You have enough of it in you now. The morning drifts in like steam from a forgotten teacup, unhurried, warm, and slightly scented with rosemary. You wake not with a jolt or a dream, but with that curious awareness that something inside you has shifted. Not dramatically. No celestial visions. No triumphant music. Just a softened edge, the way old wood smooths under 1,000 touches. You sit up, blanket tangled around your legs, and look toward the window. The light is pale, brushed with that gentle, lemony color that only seems to happen on days with no expectations. You breathe. It feels quiet, but not empty. The spoon, your pewter companion, is gone from your pocket. Not stolen, not misplaced. You set it aside last night beneath the fig tree, and somehow you didn't feel the need to bring it back with you. It's still there, probably, sitting in the folds of earth and dusk, doing what it always did, existing without needing to explain itself. You rise slowly, stretch until your joints whisper, and pad out of your room with that half glide. Monks develop from years of not wanting to wake anyone. The hallways are still. The mosaic of St. Perpetua still looks like she's winking. The chapel smells faintly of beeswax and unspoken questions. You pass them all like old friends. But it's when you reach the little garden behind the refectory that something peculiar happens. There, lying in the middle of the path, like it simply wandered away from dinner, is a wooden spoon. You pause. This one's different, longer than yours was. Its bowl wide but shallow. The handle was carved not decoratively, just smoothed by use. There's a faint nick on the edge, like it once went to war with a stubborn turnip and barely survived. You pick it up. It's warm from the sun, lighter than you expect. It smells faintly of cloves. And in that moment, you feel a tiny click inside your chest. Not a grand revelation, just the quiet recognition that somehow this spoon matters, even if you don't yet know why. You glance around, half expecting Matteo or Sister Anselma to leap from the hedges and shout, "Surprise!" But no one's there, just you and the spoon and a small scrap of parchment folded like a forgotten prayer on the bench nearby. You sit, carefully unfold it. The ink is smudged, the writing tilted, like the author was either in a hurry or had terrible posture. It reads, "Some things are meant to be used, not solved. Some questions feed the soul, not the archive. Some spoons just find the right hands. No signature, just a small drawing in the corner, a fig leaf, and beneath it, a single dot. You stare at it for a while. Not because you don't understand it, but because it feels like you already do, and your mind is politely waiting for your heart to catch up. You look down at the spoon again. It's not a clue. It's not an answer. It's a continuation. You run your thumb along the grain. The wood hums with a kind of quiet endurance, the kind found in hand-me-down aprons and stones polished by centuries of feet. And so, without quite meaning to, you rise. You bring the spoon with you. Not like a detective with a new lead, but like a gardener carrying a trowel, or a singer holding a note that hasn't yet landed. The next few hours slip by gently. You help Brother Felix unstick a jammed quill press in the scriptorium. You refill the oil lamp that no one remembered to refill. You wave off a delivery of 32 cabbages that no one ordered. The delivery boy, incidentally, also has a spoon in his back pocket. You don't ask. At midday, you sit under the old cedar in the courtyard and use the spoon not for eating but to gently stir a small pot of honeyed oats for a passing novice too timid to speak. She smiles. And you feel again that curious weightlessness of having passed something on without having to own it. Later, as evening rolls in like a kind old aunt who always brings extra biscuits, you return to the fig tree. And it's there, waiting. Your pewter spoon, still tucked in the crook of root and earth dappled in amber light. But you don't pick it up. You sit beside it. You lay the wooden one next to it gently. The two lie parallel, different, but not distant. And you realize the spoon you carried didn't solve the mystery. It was the mystery. And that was enough. Because the mystery, like the spoon, was never about answers. It was about paying attention to the way things vanish and reappear, how something so small can become sacred when held with care, how a collection isn't measured by display cases or inventory lists, but by the quiet echo it leaves in someone's life. You close your eyes for a moment. The air is warm. A bird sings half-heartedly. Somewhere a bell chimes, not urgently, just conversationally. You open your eyes and whisper a small thank you to the spoon, to the story, to the silence between them. Then you rise. You leave both spoons where they are. Someone else will find them, and perhaps they'll carry them, or forget them, or write a poem about them on the back of a grocery list. You don't need to know. You've already found what you didn't know you were missing. Not a relic, but a rhythm. The slow, sacred rhythm of noticing. It begins again, as it always does with the quiet. Not silence exactly, more like a padded stillness, the kind that wears slippers and brings its cup of tea. It hums in the stone walls and the spaces between your thoughts, inviting you to linger just a bit longer in the threshold between dreaming and waking. You blink into the dim light of your cell. The candle has burned low, leaving a waxy loop like a sleeping snail on the sill. Outside, the first doves clear their throats. Somewhere, water gurgles through ancient pipes that groan like tired philosophers. You don't rush to rise. This morning feels different. Or maybe you do. The spoon you left beneath the fig tree yesterday, your last silent gesture to the story you followed through kitchens, corridors, and Absurd amounts of inventory parchment lingers in your memory. You didn't mean it to be a farewell. You just knew it had to stay there. You stretch. Your back replies with 3 polite cracks. You nod to no one in particular, as though accepting an invitation. Outside, the air smells faintly of thyme and old laundry. As you walk through the cloister garden, the sun rises shyly behind the tiled roofs, casting long shadows that look like they're trying to sneak back into bed. The tiles are still damp with dew, but your feet know the path by heart. Left past the herb beds, right near the statue of Saint Monica that always seems to be judging your posture. And then you see it. Not your spoon, not even the wooden one with the fig symbol. Something else. Balanced perfectly on the edge of a stone bench is a silver spoon, small and delicate with an ornate curl at the tip. It glints like it knows something, and beside it a folded note. You hesitate, but only for a moment. You sit, pick up the note. The ink is familiar now, slanted a little smug. For those who never needed to keep the spoon to remember what it taught them. For those who didn't solve the puzzle, but became part of it. Thank you for noticing. There's no signature. But on the back, a single, unmistakable dot. You don't laugh this time. You just breathe. A breeze stirs the trees. Somewhere nearby, someone's boiling oats. You hold the silver spoon for a moment, feeling its chill ease into your fingers. Then gently you lay it back where you found it. It doesn't need to come with you. It already has. The rest of the morning passes like honey, sliding down the side of a jar. You help Brother Matteo carry scrolls to the archive room. He drops 3 blames the humidity and sneezes into his sleeve. You nod solemnly, pretending not to notice the ink blotch on his forehead. You accept a slice of pear from the kitchen boy who's now taken to wearing 2 spoons in his belt for balance. You don't ask. Some mysteries are better left sacred. At midday, the bell rings for a minor feast, Saint Vilberta of the missing socks. Not technically canonized, but beloved by novices who keep losing their laundry. As you sit down at the long table, something catches your eye. The cutlery. Nothing fancy, just the usual mishmash of monastery spoons. But there's one. 3rd from the left. Ivory handle, tiny inscription near the stem. You lean closer. It reads, Benedissimus mensam. Amen. It shouldn't be here, or perhaps it always was. You smile, nudge it slightly toward your plate, and use it to eat your lentils. It's surprisingly well balanced. Someone across the table makes a joke about holy soup. Someone else raises their spoon in a toast. You do too. It's not the spoon that matters. It's the way it moves, shared, borrowed, forgotten, returned, like stories, like kindness. That evening you return once more to the fig tree. You don't expect to find anything. But there, nestled in the roots, is a new object. Not a spoon. A small, worn book. Its cover bears no title. Its pages smell like old bread and lavender. Inside, just one entry. Final inventory of spoons, compiled in gentle sleep. Status in circulation. You close the book softly. Sit with it. And for a moment, let your mind drift to all the hands that have held spoons before you. Abbots and bakers, thieves and saints' mothers. Mischief makers. Monks with secrets. Each one added something to the shape of the story. Each one stirred something. You tuck the book into your robe, not to hoard it, but to keep it warm. Someone else will need it eventually. Back in your room, you light a small candle. Its glow flickers like memory. You write a final line in your notebook, the one you started long before spoons began disappearing. Some mysteries you don't solve. You live in them until they no longer need solving. Then you close the book, curl up beneath your blanket, and close your eyes. The candle flickers once, twice, then settles. You're not thinking about spoons anymore. You're thinking about the people who passed them and the stories they whispered between bites, and how somehow you ended up among them. Part of the inventory. Exactly where you're meant to be.